Bradford has a very difficult challenge to overcome, whereby the life expectancy from some of the inner city areas at the foot of the Yorkshire Dales, there's a 14-year life expectancy drop. If you stand in Shanghai and go to the western provinces of China, life expectancy does not drop that much. So over such a small area of geography, there's such a big difference in terms of health, in terms of deprivation, and what we've really got to do now is find a way to regenerate Bradford in a way that starts to work for those communities that have some of the hardest issues, problems to tackle in their lives.
Hello, welcome to Talking Place, the podcast bringing placemakers and storytellers together to talk about place. I'm your host, Tanisha Rafiuddin. I am the founder of Concept Culture, a creative agency in London, passionate about creating purposeful brands and telling powerful stories. In this episode, recorded live at the Bradford Showcase at UKREiiF 2026 in Leeds, I sat down with three people right at the heart of making Bradford's next chapter happen. David Shepherd, Strategic Director for Growth at Bradford Council, the person responsible for the blueprint that's driving the city forward. Lisa Gledhill, Managing Director of National Partnerships at Muse and a Director of the English Cities Fund, the development partner behind Bradford City Village. And Niall Bourke, Associate Director at Arup, who's been watching Bradford City Centre transform over 2 decades of work on the ground. We talk about what it means to make a market in a city at marginal viability, the art and hard work of public-private partnership, custodianship of heritage, of community, of momentum, and what it really takes to shape a city that works for everyone who lives in it. All right, let's talk place. Welcome to the Talking Place podcast.
Hi there, good morning.
Good morning. So we're here at the Bradford Showcase at UKREiiF 2026 in Leeds, and we're going to be talking about shaping the 21st century city and the context of Bradford. But before we do that, I'd love for our audience to get to know you, so please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Lisa Gledhill. I'm Managing Director of National Partnerships at Muse and also a Director of E27, who's the development partner on Bradford City Village.
Hi, good morning. My name's David Shepherd. I work for Bradford Council as the Strategic Director for the Department of Growth, driving the kind of blueprint for delivering growth and improvements to the built environment in this big, great northern city.
Hi, and I'm Niall Bourke. I'm an Associate Director with Arup. We're a built environment consultancy working in Leeds and working closely with David and the team in Bradford.
Thank you and welcome all. So let's start at the beginning. So this podcast is about place. How would you describe Bradford as a place to someone who maybe hasn't heard of it before or hasn't visited it before?
I suppose I should go first
Go
on
for
that.
it, yeah.
So I've got the pleasure of living in Bradford most of my life. I'm in my late 40s, and also I've the pleasure of being responsible for its growth as a job, which is a real privilege. I think Bradford's very different. The Regen and Growth Plan we've just launched is called Built Different for a reason. And I think it's a city that in the past has been underestimated. It was once one of the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, one of the most influential cities in the world politically, and from a kind of industrial perspective with the mills and the growth of textiles. So if you're in Bradford at the moment, you're seeing everything having its 150th anniversary, because that was 150 years ago when everybody was absolutely minted and building things that were extravagant, and we've got this massive canvas of gorgeous heritage buildings which is steeped in history. But since that time, Bradford has changed enormously in terms of its demography, in terms of the people that have seen Bradford as their home and come to live in the city. And we're now this really diverse, large, young population.
That's right.
We have a demographic dividend, which has the ability to be converted into economic growth. And that is kind of our job in the modern day. I think that's our challenge. But Bradford is somewhere where a lot of people have over the years kind of made it home. We've got first, second generation immigrants who are actually now forging careers for themselves. They've had their own businesses for many years. They've got money to invest and they're really committed to the place. And we have a lot of people in Bradford who have have been kind of living with the city through its changes, and now kind of really interested in what's going to happen next. So it's almost like a bit of an experiment for what is the right winning organising system for a big UK city from a regeneration perspective, and that's really exciting.
So what does core city mean for Bradford, like beyond a marketing headline?
I suppose for me, we look at a number of measures when we look at core cities, and we look at how other core cities are performing against their measures, and we cross-reference that with how Bradford's performing. Because of its size, nearly 600,000 people, 16,000 businesses, a very broad economy, Bradford's already performing better than some other UK core cities. But in order to kind of really project Bradford forward as a leading core city in the UK, we need to accelerate performance on things like economic productivity, on things like connectivity around transport in particular, where a lot of focus is at the moment, and in terms of new jobs and new businesses that are started up and survival rates, we need to improve on those things. Some metrics where Bradford's doing really well is on reducing its NEAT. So children, being such a big young city, it's really important that kids are in employment, are in education. It's one of the best ways to embed inclusivity into our population. We're doing really well on that. And exports, what we're finding is a lot of our people are international. They are exporting, especially to non-EU countries, which is a really interesting trend from an economic growth perspective.
I might give my take on how I see Bradford as well, because I think I've got a bit of a different perspective. I am a Bradfordian, so I went to school in Bradford in the 70s and 80s, and unfortunately I'm one of those people that had to leave Bradford in order to progress my career. So I've lived in London for nigh on 30 years, but my family still live in Bradford, so I still have a very strong connection with Bradford. And I was absolutely delighted when, through Muse, I could find this connection in a work sense back to being able to, in some tiny way, but contribute to the sort of resurgence of Bradford. So I'm very much of that kind of generation that's seen it through its difficult phases. I kept in touch. I'm a Bradford City fan. I very much keep in touch with the city, and it's remained very, very sort of deep in my heart. But it's absolutely fantastic to be part of, again, in some small way, but it's amazing to be part of the journey of it coming back up, and you can see it in all different shapes and sizes. City of culture, there's lots of different things that I'm more excited than the people that I know that are in Bradford about the future of Bradford, because they've been a little bit on a few journeys in the past, and I'm completely committed and believing this time we're going to do it, and I need to bring all my family with them and prove to them that we are going to do it.
So are you moving back to Bradford? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's a big ask.
My dad would be delighted, because he's always showing me Rightmove and the properties that I can there's a house for you here, Lisa.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm a relative newcomer. Cause I moved from Ireland to Yorkshire 23 years ago now, and joined Arup, and had the opportunity to work on Bradford City Park, which was the sort of first really big public realm investment as Bradford started to come out of the sort of doldrums. So over the last 20 years, I've really seen the city centre change, see it develop. And it's really in the last couple of years that it's really come together. There's been incremental changes and momentum building behind the city, lots of investment in public realm, and it's really lifted the city. And in the past year, I would say it's one of the best looking urban centres in the UK in terms of the quality that's gone into the space. Yeah. So it's really changed, and it's a great place. I mean, I sort of the wealth of heritage assets and the buildings are absolutely incredible. And it's just, when I moved, it was not really showing itself off. And now it's at a point where the public realm, the spaces outside the buildings are complementing the heritage. And now it's about how do we breathe more life into the city centre through schemes like City Village, bringing more urban living into the centre to really make it fly.
Yeah.
One of my favourite things is bringing people, reintroducing Bradford to Bradfordians, but also I bring people, I visit with people from outside, that have got cause to come and have a look. But even the Bradfordians as well that have maybe not been in the city centre for a little while, they're blown away by how fantastic it looks.
Yeah.
All the pedestrianisation and the greening and they are blown away. So yeah, everybody needs to get back into the middle and reintroduce themselves to it.
Yeah. And don't quote me on this, but I think building design has shortlisted Bradford to be one of the design capitals this year. It's shortlisted. I think it's building design, but don't quote me on that. Some magazine has shortlisted Bradford as capital city of design. So now let's talk about delivery at scale. What does that mean in Bradford right now? Maybe from a master planning perspective, what's happening right now?
Yes, so we've had the opportunity over the last year to start looking at the Southern Gateway, which is it's, if you're looking on a clock face, it would be everything from sort of 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock on the clock face. So it's the southern quarter of Bradford, and it's characterised by kind of light industrial, low density businesses, but it's sitting in between existing communities. It sits alongside a really vibrant Leeds Road business district with huge offers for shopping, but it's very disconnected from the city centre, despite only being a few hundred metres away. So the Southern Gateway is all about, it's a great opportunity to reintroduce and rebuild the city centre, build a sustainable place, improve the access, make it easier to move to and through the space into the city centre, connecting with the rail station, connecting communities from just outside the city centre into the heart of the city, and it should open up opportunities for tourists and visitors to the city to see a different part of Bradford's culture, because I think there is a lot of activity in the neighbourhoods around Bradford, but it's not accessible if you don't know the city, and if you come into the city you can miss a lot. So Southern Gateway is a really good opportunity to stitch in some brilliant design into the city to really help it grow.
I think when you're working with such a big city with so many different ingredients, it's really interesting. I've been on a personal journey. I've been in this job for 3.5 years, but I've lived in Bradford most of my life, and I have seen things and learned so much in the last 3.5 years because of the kind of unique perspective you get as a senior leader inside Bradford Council. So I had my first trip into a mosque during 2025. I've gone into and got to know certain communities and seen those real kind of amazing things that happen at local level, especially in our inner city communities where things are bound together by a real kind of community spirit that you don't sense. I grew up in Bradford. The only time I would go to certain districts was because I played Bradford League cricket. So I got to kind of play in different parts of Bradford, but through my school, through my education, you never really got that opportunity. And actually when you do see Bradford and all its different parts, you realise how powerful all them parts can be to help kind of move the place forward. Niall's just mentioned that the master planning for the Southern Gateway, it's 146 hectares of very poor, underperforming land at the south side of our city centre. And around that space are all our most kind of densely populated inner city communities, tackling some of the worst poverty in the country. Bradford has a very difficult challenge to overcome, whereby the life expectancy from some of the inner city areas out to the areas like Ilkley and near the Yorkshire, the foot of the Yorkshire Dales, there's a 14-year life expectancy drop. If you stand in Shanghai and go to the western provinces of China, life expectancy does not drop that much. So over such a small area of geography, there's such a big difference in terms of health, in terms of deprivation. And what we've really got to do now is find a way to regenerate Bradford in a way that starts to work for those communities that have some of the hardest issues, problems to tackle in their lives.
And can you talk us through, maybe at a high level, what those measures look like in practice?
Yeah. So this is something that's really difficult to kind of, I suppose from a regeneration perspective, it's really difficult to put your finger on one or two things that make the biggest difference. So you need a strong evidence base. We're very lucky in Bradford to have one of the world's largest longitudinal studies into what helps, what improves children's lives. It's called Born in Bradford. It's monitored thousands of people from the day they were born up to the age they are now, and some of these people I think are hitting their 20s. And we've gathered years of data as to what things make the biggest difference. Now, obviously, the education system, there's your obvious ones in there. Your education system, quality of housing, but what we're finding is some things around public realm, access to green spaces, access to kind of those spaces where you kind of rely on every day. So it's not just like your local shops, it's access to the places where you may practice your faith, you may kind of, it's about, one really big thing is about the type of housing in an area. What we've found is that people who have different housing requirements are too often asked to leave their community to get the housing type they need. So it's starting to drive how we look at residential growth, what type of housing mix we supply in certain areas. One of the other big things that it's showing, it's around public safety. Yes. And that feeling of feeling at home and at ease in your community, because that's where you get your confidence from as a young person. Yes. So a lot of the work we're doing with the mayor around women's and girls' safety, and it's not just women and girls, it's everybody. Designing the place in a clever way. We've done a lot with the city centre around where we work with the police in terms of developing the design of schemes to make sure that whatever we deliver kind of works for communities and makes them feel safe and gets that inner confidence, gets them out of their homes into the communities and kind of participating and being engaged.
Mm-hmm. Now, that quite resonates with me, because you're always wondering about regeneration versus gentrification, and who stays, who it's all very challenging. And when you design a beautiful public realm, is it for everybody, or is it for a certain kind of people from a certain economic class? So I think what Bradford has done well is create this public realm where everyone is a part of it, because I visited it last year, first time in Bradford, and it blew my mind. I don't know what it looked like before, so I don't know what was the starting point, but just as a visitor, I'm thinking, okay, this is cool. How come I didn't hear about Bradford before? So now you're making headways, you're making headlines, the waves in the media. So there's going to be more attention now on Bradford, and we're definitely going to be talking to your colleagues about the study you mentioned as well. So that's coming up in the next episode. But Lisa, tell me, from a developer perspective, what makes Bradford stack up, and what are you seeing here that you're not seeing elsewhere?
Opportunity, I think, is what it comes down to. But the flip side of opportunity is hard yards. There's no doubt about it that Bradford is not at the top of everyone's lists of places to invest. There's no qualms about that. We've got to be honest about that. So we've got to sell the story to people, to investors, about why Bradford makes sense, and we're still on that journey. We're still very much on that journey. I think investors look for places that nobody wants to go first. So when we talk about BTR, build to rent, which is homes that are specifically developed for a rental market, a private rental market. Of course, we've got affordable homes for rent that we're probably all more familiar with, but those purpose-built accommodation that and homes that is specifically for the private rental market is fairly new to Bradford. So we've got to prove that concept. I mean, the numbers stack up on paper in terms of the demand, but we've got to go on that journey. But I mean, maybe I'll just say a little bit about Bradford City Village and what that's all about. So it's the reimagining of the old retail heart of Bradford. So that's the Arndale Centre, the Osler Market up at the top of town. So from Darley Street up towards the top of town. 3 distinct sites, 25 hectares in total. And the plan is just under 1,000 homes to be built there. And as part of that, the Arndale Centre will come down, and we'll reopen the architectural lines, the historic line of sight that you can see through the streets, where the Arndale has blocked. It's a big block, and it's blocked those lines of sight down. So that in itself will really shift that area of Bradford and reopen it. So I think we're the custodians of the heritage of Bradford, and again, for those who've visited, look up, look around. It's stunning, and we've got to be the custodians of keeping in line with that, you know, in a modern way. But we've got to acknowledge that juxtaposition that we're next to. But we're 1,000 homes, just under 1,000 homes, and the idea is that over the last few years, COVID's definitely accelerated it, but it's been happening for some time. The retail centres of towns have changed. You know, people no longer visit. The offer, it becomes a bit of a downward spiral of direction. And the idea is that we can bring homes to the centre of Bradford so that people can live there instead of just visiting. That means that much needed homes will be provided in the middle of Bradford, but also much needed footfall to re-enliven that centre and to really create something that's you know, rejuvenated in that particular area. So it will be homes for many people of different tenures. In other words, we use the term resilient mixed tenure communities, meaning people from different demographies coming together to form communities that are integrated and resilient, and that bond together in a sort of purposeful way. That's the idea, along with the retail, the hospitality areas, the green areas that allow them to live and to breathe in that old heart of Bradford at the top of town.
And you talk about that sort of, you know, somebody's got to go first. But I think one thing that I've noticed and it started, you know, with this, with the mirror pool, the pent-up demand for equitable access to space is huge. We had 12,000 people descended on the mirror pool the day it opened. City of Culture Bradford was the UK City of Culture last year, and that reinforced the demand that, you know, people really want to be out and in the space, and if you create the right spaces, you will get people using it. And the picture behind us, which is to the south of the City Hall, Norfolk Gardens, which has absolutely changed character. A road was closed, new public space has been put in, new cycleways, new walkways, but it's allowed people to step out of offices. So, you know, wind back the clock to 12, 18 months ago, you'd go into the city centre, there's lots of, you know, office jobs, but nobody really visible. You go there now on a dry day, I won't say warm and sunny day, but on a dry day, and you've got people who come down and, you know, and they sit out, they have lunch. You've got families that come into town, have picnics, and I think it proves that, you know, you don't have to really imagine. You can now see that actually city centre living is possible and attractive, and that's, you know, that momentum is really important.
We are, so in Bradford we're also very real. Regeneration and speaking at conferences, you have to show you have a confidence, because that sense of energy is what developers and investors basically insist upon and need to see in order to have confidence to invest. But we're also very real in Bradford. So you mentioned kind of, is it stacking up? It's a place of marginal viability at the moment. The market fundamentals are just not quite there, and that's the same in a lot of what the government might recall left behind places and cities. And we have one of the biggest cities here, sandwiched right between Leeds and Manchester, with all these ingredients to make it a really compelling place for investment. But the market fundamentals around kind of what you can get back as a return versus what it costs to build, when build costs are actually really high at the moment, does make it challenging. So Lisa's hit the nail on the head. We are making a market on City Village. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make a market for a really vibrant city centre residential offer in one of the North's biggest cities. And if we do that right, the pipeline that can happen after that will start speaking for itself, and hopefully we get to a place where there is viability. But that kind of conversation around what our city is being used for now, less going into work and being in an office, more for an experience around culture, meets office, meets residential, with a transport system emerging around it. That's what I think is the right winning organising system for a major UK city at the moment, given what we've learned over the past few years from the pandemic and people's kind of desire for better work-life balance.
Absolutely, that's music to my ears, the whole 360 urban living, let's not get into 15-minute city, but all anything you want to do should be accessible to you within a certain radius. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. That is absolutely what 21st urban living is like. And during the pandemic, we were all locked away. Now we want to come out, and we don't always want to be on our phones and stuck to screens, right? We want to be walking around. We want to be engaging back with people. We're hearing things like loneliness epidemics and stuff like that. We want people to come back. You talk about footfall. We want people to make the journey into the urban centre, and to do that we have to give them reasons to come, right? And reasons to come and to stay, and then tell their friends and bring other people. So you talked about custodianship, and this looks like a public-private partnership. So I'm going to ask you the very obvious question: what makes a public-private partnership actually work?
I always say that there's three things that are really important. You've got to have aligned values, not necessarily exactly the same, but aligned, and a culture that can rub along together. So again, you're not going to have the same culture, but you've got to be able to sort of work together effectively, because the dynamics, we're going to work together for a long time.
Yes.
It's really important that we can effectively work together, challenge each other at times, but that we can work together. You've got to have the same objectives for different reasons, possibly slightly different reasons, but we've got the same objectives. And then you've got to have trust, because we come together because we each can do different things and bring different things. And if we're each, there's check and challenge and governance and all that good stuff, but we've got to trust each other to do the stuff that we're supposed to be good at, and allow each other to bring that to the party. So for three pretty simple ingredients. I think from an ECF perspective, so English Cities Fund, there's partnerships within partnerships here, by the way. It's a very kind of complicated map if you drew it all out. But the thing that we always say is, for English Cities Fund to be successful, we have to go to a place that's got really strong local vision and sponsorship and leadership. We cannot bring that. We work with that. And that's what we've got in Bradford. It's absolutely crucial. We're not going to succeed without it. And then, of course, there's other people like West Yorkshire Combined Authority that have got a role to play, and in communities for phase 1 at the moment, who are going to take on the affordable housing there. And there's lots of different parties that come into the wider partnership. But at the forefront is that local sponsorship and leadership, which is crucial. And then we bring our 25 years of partnership experience to bear, but we can only do that behind them.
Yeah. I think strong public agency is really important at this moment in time, because ECF, as Lisa mentioned, have got years of experience, and you've got to be willing to take that experience, because it's been a long time since we've tackled something of a size of a city village development in Bradford City Centre. So being able to have partners come on that journey with us who've got experience of how it's worked or not worked in other parts of the country is really important. But I think you need strong public agency. So we've been blessed in Bradford. We have done some major regeneration pump priming in the last 2-3 years. That's why the place in the city centre in particular looks very different. It's been challenging, and there's been twists and turns, things where, for example, the city centre bus station was closed for a year during a period where we were pedestrianising a lot of the main inner city streets. But we had to work with the public sector, and we're very lucky that all our politicians, no matter what party they represent, get Bradford and get the need for Bradford to move forward. And we've had amazing support through some very troubled times of delivering major projects that has held everything together. So that, I call it a strong trading mentality, civic trading mentality, where we decided what we were going to do. We needed to wake the city up. We needed to tell people stories, so people in Bradford felt they were part of a progressive narrative rather than a deficit-based one, and get the place moving. And we've done that. But now it's about what's next.
What's next, exactly. Well, that leads us nicely on to final thoughts. So what is next? And let's leave the audience with some lessons on what it takes to shape a viable, inclusive, successful 21st century city?
So I'd say it's the vision, and I think the Be Bold, Be Bradford was is the mantra about doing something different, and that sort of flows through. I think practicality. So I think from what I've seen, when you've had those challenges, it hasn't been about engineering the value out of the scheme. It's been about, right, what's the core that we need to preserve, and how do we make sure that value is maintained and delivered? And sometimes that's at the expense of maybe shrinking the size of what you're trying to achieve, but really keeping the ambition high and delivering it. That has really paid dividends, and we've seen that. The Norfolk Gardens was originally part of the 2008 scheme, and it took a while to get there. But actually, if we tried to deliver too much, we would have ended up with a less impactful design. And I think that's flowing through City Village. It's flowing through Southern Gateway. So it's really establishing really core vision, and then making sure that you're sticking to it.
Yeah. I'd say relentless drive is next, because we've got ourselves to a point where we have momentum, but this is where we wanted to be, so we've got to take it forward. So we've created a really strong in-house team of people who can deliver from the private sector, and the head of economy and regeneration, Adam Brennan's come across from Leeds, who's got a lot of experience at how to deliver things like the South Bank. So the next big milestones for us are summer delivery of the strategic outline business case for Bradford Rail programme to the Department for Transport. We've got ourselves at the front of the queue for the first big kind of decision on what happens from the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme. We want a new station in the heart of the city centre, a through line and faster connections to Huddersfield and onto Manchester and obviously Leeds. The next big thing is to get to work on demolishing the two big former markets, Ostler and Kirkgate, formerly the Armdale, and to get them sites to a developable base for the housing to start coming through as part of City Village. And then a lot has focused on the city centre over the past few years. Our team are now focusing on the great towns that we have, so places like Shipley, Bingley, Keighley. We're blessed with one of the country's biggest town deals. We have capital to do things with. We have development frameworks setting out a clear blueprint for what we want to see happen. Shipley's had its new marketplace installed. It's got a £100 million new train care factory. We've got some exciting investments in the kind of RF microwave technologies cluster space. Keighley, we've just had our Pride in Place funding confirmed yesterday by MHCLG. We're working on the Health and Wellbeing Centre in the town, and we've got the £1.5 billion Airedale new build hospital development underway. So there's things happening, but the towns are really important to Bradford, and we're going to really get to work on them over the next few years.
And back to the sort of micro of not so micro, but relative to that, Bradford City Village, as you said, it's a very exciting point for us, where a lot of things happen behind the scene, getting planning. We've got outline planning for the whole of it, detailed planning for phase one. So now we're into delivery, and that's the bit where people sort of see there's years goes on behind that to get to that point. But from now, it's grit and determination. That's what you have to bring to the fore now, and always balance with humility, because we have to remain with our ears open, listening to the people, and making sure that we keep everything in balance as much as feasible. But it's just shoulder behind it, grit and determination.
So vision, relentless drive, grit and determination, and humility. Those are the ingredients to make a 21st century urban city. Thank you so much for talking place with me, and I look forward to seeing what comes next out of Bradford, and I'll be definitely telling people to come and make the trip up north.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to join the conversation on social media with the hashtag #TalkingPlace. I would also love for you to leave our podcast a review and subscribe to all our podcasts and YouTube channels. so you don't miss an episode. There's so much more to explore when it comes to creating good places, and I'm excited to do a deep dive into other topics with you in our next episode. I'm Tanisha Rafiuddin, and it's been my pleasure to be your podcast host. Thank you for listening. See you again next time, where we'll continue talking place. Talk soon.